Peugeot's 508 has certainly evolved, but its virtues are much as before, with comfort, style and practicality all strong selling points. It's still not the most dynamic choice you could make in this segment, but it's a consummate cruiser that's benefited from extra technology and the option of a more efficient BlueHDi diesel engine, both of which have combined with the smarter styling to keep this saloon and SW estate lineup current.
The Peugeot 508 was launched to change the way you think about the brand's larger models. Now it's time to change the way you think about the 508. Welcome to this, the revised first generation version. Reports of the demise of its marketplace, that for mainstream medium-sized Mondeo class family cars, appear to have been greatly exaggerated. It's true that in recent years, this sector has certainly been besieged from all sides, from crossovers, SUVs and compact executive models from the upmarket German brands. But across Europe, it still accounts for more than 50% of sales in what the industry calls the D segment, conventional saloons and estates that are larger than a Focus-sized family hatch, but a little smaller than a big executive class model. Cars, in other words, just like this one. Look back on the history of large Peugeots, say at the 403 model of the 50s, the 404 of the 60s and the 504 of the 70s, or the 505 of the 80s, and you see the brand pursuing a one-size-fits-all approach to this segment. Core customers simply didn't need anything bigger. It was a strategy unwisely abandoned between the later 80s and the modern era, when 405 and 605 models and later their 407 and 607 descendants were launched to offer buyers separate large and larger alternatives in this sector. With the launch of this 508 model in 2012, that idea was abandoned. Going forward, this would be the only option if you wanted a really spacious, comfortable Peugeot of the conventional kind. It's not, though, of course, the only option if you want a saloon or an estate of this sort with a mainstream badge. And since this model's original launch, all of its rivals have either been substantially revised or, like Ford's Mondeo and Volkswagen's Passat, completely redesigned. In the summer of 2014, in an effort to keep up, Peugeot brought us the substantially revised 508 we're going to look at here, with smarter styling, extra high-tech cleverness, and a more efficient range of engines. Will it all be enough? Let's find out. There are plenty of reasons why this 508 shouldn't be as good to drive as it is. For a start, it's a big car that, with up to 1.7 tons of weight, is also pretty heavy for a vehicle of its kind. And if you were really setting out to produce a medium-range model with handling to match a Mondeo, would you really base it on the waterbed-like Citroën C5 as in this case? All these things make it even more surprising to find when you start to hustle this Peugeot along that it's up for the chase. If not quite the drive of your life promised by the brand's early TV ads, then definitely a drive you'd really rather look forward to. Perhaps we should have expected this. After all, the clues were in the spec sheet. Take, for example, the brave decision to go against the grain and retain hydraulic rather than electric power assistance for better driving feel that gives you more feedback through the bends. That, incidentally, is why you can't specify this car with the kind of self-parking system that some rivals offer. Then there's Peugeot's provision of two distinct front suspension systems, not something you'd bother with if motorway mile munching was all you really cared for your car to be able to cover. Most 508s get a straightforward strut setup, but to better handle its extra power, the flagship 200 PS 2.2 litre variant retains the double wishbone type setup from the old 407. With GT badging and a prodigious 450 Newton meters of torque to propel it down the road, This upmarket 2.2 HDI model ought to offer the sportiest 508 drive, but it doesn't. Though the non-negotiable provision of a 6-speed automatic that does without the latest slick-shifting double-clutch electronics is one explanation for this, the main reason why is weight. The bigger engine and fancy suspension mean that it must lug around up to 150 kilograms more bulk than lower order 508 models, and the effect of that is evident in performance figures that'll see, for example, an SW Estate GT variant takes 9.2 seconds to reach 62 miles per hour from rest en route to 144 miles per hour. So less is more in 508 land then? Pretty much yes. If, like almost all buyers, you confine your selection to 1.6 and 2-litre engines, then the big news with this revised model is the addition of the brand's latest generation 2-litre BlueHDi diesel, offered with 150 brake horsepower in manual form or with 180 brake horsepower as a 6-speed automatic. In either case, there's enough performance to compensate for the fact that the 508 lineup no longer provides any petrol options. An SW version of the 150 brake horsepower variant making 62 miles per hour from rest in 10.1 seconds on the way to 130 miles per hour. But more importantly, putting out a pokey 370 newton meters of torque, so you won't have to stir the gearbox too much into action if you're running really late. Alongside the BlueHDi offering sit the older Euro 5 engines carried over from the original 508 range. Most will probably want the entry-level 1.6-litre eHDi diesel models, which offer 115 brake horsepower. That's enough in a 508 SW to take you to 62 miles per hour from rest in 12.1 seconds if you specify the ordinary 6-speed manual gearbox. That's a fraction quicker than the figure you'll get if you ordered this variant with Peugeot's slightly jerky EGC electronically controlled manual gearbox. Essentially an ordinary stick shift without the clutch. Both 1.6-litre eHDI models top out at just over 120 miles per hour. Here though, I've opted for the version that bridges the gap between that base 1.6 and fully fledged BlueHDi 508 motoring, namely the 2-litre HDI 140 brake horsepower variant that I'm trying here. It's a good compromise of speed and efficiency, in SW form getting from rest to 62 miles per hour in 11.1 seconds, on the way to 130 miles per hour if you're quick with the lovely short throw 6-speed manual gearbox. There's a 6-speed automatic version too, which gets a slightly pokier 163 brake horsepower version of this power plant to compensate for the extra weight of the self-shifting transmission. The same engine, in fact, that's used in the most interesting 508 model, the Hybrid 4 variant. We're talking diesel-electric hybrids here rather than the petrol-electric technology you might be more familiar with from cars like Toyota's Prius. In the 508 lineup, the Hybrid 4 drivetrain is offered either with the saloon body style or in RXH estate form, this latter designation denoting a version of the SW model with SUV cues. Either way, you get some very clever engineering. The 163 brake horsepower 2-litre HDI diesel I just mentioned here being combined with a 37 brake horsepower electric motor cleverly packaged into the rear axle and able to make this an all-wheel driven vehicle whenever the driver selects the necessary 4-wheel drive mode. If 2-wheel drive is sufficient for the progress that you have in mind, there's also a ZEV or zero emissions vehicle setting, which will keep you in fuel-saving electric-only mode for as long as the nickel metal hydride cells hold out. As you might expect, all of this technology is quite expensive, and for those who can't stretch to it, Peugeot is also offering the RXH model with the 2-litre BlueHDi 180 conventional diesel engine. So, how to sum up? Ford hasn't been surpassed as the driver's choice in this class, but Peugeot has managed to run the blue oval close with a more refined car that's a more relaxing haven for longer journeys. There's a quality here that feels premium German, and I'm not just talking about the fixtures and fittings. The standard fit acoustic windscreen, the dampers fitted to the front axle to reduce vibration, and the suspension setup that, even in its simplest form, rides potholes with disdainful ease, yet is also able to offer confident cornering. It's all enough to create in this car a better medium range model than any Peugeot has offered us in the last 20 years. We tend to expect something special of Peugeot in the styling department, a distinguished elegance that carries a bit of weight. The original 508 certainly had a very clean shape, but it lacked that gravitas, that certain something that ought to differentiate a Peugeot from, say, a Ford or a Vauxhall. To that end, this smarter, more upright front grille with its central lion motif certainly gives the car a bit more visual clout, with chrome styling that's more assertive and adds another 16 millimeters of length to the front overhang. The bonnet's a little more handsome too, redesigned to be more horizontal and give the car what the brand hopes is a more contemporary look. That's certainly aided by the smarter lighting signature characterising all but the entry-level versions of this improved model. Headlamps, daytime running lights, direction indicators and fog lamps are all created completely from high-tech LEDs. No fewer than 44 of these bulbs being used to emphasise the modern forward-thinking feel. As before, your 508 can come either as a saloon or in this SW Estate body style, which is the one the majority of customers prefer. Here I've got the standard SW, but it's also offered in a separate RXH guise, where added SUV styling cues, the possibility of four-wheel drive and more upmarket trim aim to snare buyers who might otherwise have considered Qashqai style cars of the crossover kind. One of the advantages that this 508 holds over models of that sort is that it's usefully bigger, a 4.83 metre body length, freeing up plenty of room inside. Something you'll certainly appreciate when it comes to consideration of the luggage space on offer. Lift the optional powered tailgate on this SW Estate model and a 512 litre luggage compartment is revealed, which is a useful improvement on the 473 litre boot you get in this saloon variant. Good too that there are practical touches, an optional load net and solid hooks for restraining straps to ensure that your eggs don't end up merging with your iron brew. You also get a folding boot floor, though the area beneath is so shallow as to be only usable for items you've recently run over. It'd be helpful though to keep muddy boot marks out of sight, and useful for longer items is this ski hatch, and there's also an optional dog guard. Whatever 508 body style you choose, the rear seats flatten to increase luggage space. In this SW Estate, the process is aided by these useful levers. Activate them and a spacious 1598 litre loading area is revealed. That's actually a little less than Peugeot's supposedly smaller 308 SW model, which offers 1660 litres, or at least it is if you measure according to standard industry practice with different sized cubic boxes. The brand, however, points out that if you were to measure by liquid volume filling every crevice, then this 508 SW once more becomes the larger vehicle, offering 1865 litres as opposed to the 308 SW model 1775 litres. Confused? I was. Whatever perspective you take on the total figure, it would certainly be greater if the load space was completely flat. It can't be because the rear seat backs only flop onto the seat bases. Still, you do get 2 meters of total length, so you'll probably be surprised at exactly how much you'll be able to fit in. Another thing you might be surprised at is the space this car offers to rear seat passengers. though perhaps you shouldn't be. At launch, remember, this design had to replace Peugeot's biggest ever saloon, the old 607, which aimed to compete in the large executive BMW 5 Series class. That meant it had to offer lots of space for rear seat folk, and this car still does. A shallow transmission tunnel, a well-chosen roofline and a wide rear bench all allow 3 fully sized adults to be very comfortably seated. With standards of leg, head and knee room, that'll be a revelation for those who remember the 407 series model that this car originally replaced. True, in this segment you could enjoy slightly more room in a Ford Mondeo or a Skoda Superb, but in a 508 you feel you're in something a touch more upmarket, especially if you're in one of the plusher versions where passengers also enjoy nice touches like individual reading lights and their own air conditioning controls. Get a variant like this one fitted with the full-length 1.62 metre panoramic glass sunroof and it'll feel especially nice. Take a seat behind the wheel, and if you've had experience of the original version of this car, you'll find that this improved model offers up a noticeable improvement in quality with softer trim finishes and higher quality cloths. The main change though is the addition of this 7-inch colour touchscreen to the dash. The idea being to intuitively group together most of the vehicle's main functions and so reduce button clutter. As a result, there's certainly less switchgear on the fascia, though the whole effect is somewhat spoiled by the fact that there are still just as many buttons on the steering wheel. More in fact than you'll find in the entire cabin of Peugeot's smaller 308 hatch. Talking of the steering wheel, I should make the point that it isn't tiny and low set, the kind of thing that characterises the so-called iCockpit design used on the brand's smaller models, which pushes the wheel down into your lap and forces you to view the instruments over the top of the rim. I don't mind that on Peugeot's more compact cars, but it wouldn't really go with this model's larger, more luxurious feel. More suited to its plusher, more sophisticated ambience is the design of the instrument panel, which makes a style reference inspired by that of a precision watch. If you don't want to be constantly looking at these dials, there's the option of a head-up display with colour driving and navigation information you view on a retractable smoked viewing panel that rises at the base of the windscreen. Overall then, it's very nice, though a few issues do remain for Peugeot to address with the next generation version of this model. Though, as I've already suggested, the materials you commonly interact with all seem very upmarket. The plastics used at lower levels and around the steering column feel a little cheap, as do the gearshift paddles you get on automatic models. On the plus side though, practicality remains a plus point for 508 owners. Even if a thief gets into your vehicle, it may be more than a moment of work to find your valuables, given the sheer amount of cubbies, drawers and pockets provided. Those in the cabin alone total 22 litres and include door pockets that can hold 1.5 litre bottles. This won't be what you remember though after a spell at the wheel. No, the quality of this car is what shines through. Maybe the way that the driver's seat with its electric lumbar control adjusts to every contour of your body, or perhaps you'll particularly like the style of the centre console that's smartly lacquered in black with highlighted touches of chrome. In short, there's a level of luxury here that you probably wouldn't expect from a car in this class. Depending on the deal you get and the spec and model you choose, you're likely to find yourself paying somewhere between £22,000 and £32,000 for your 508, with a model for model premium if you want to go from the 4-door saloon to the SW estate of either £1,200 or £1,400 depending on the trim level you're looking at. This SW body shape is the one the majority of 508 buyers choose in the absence of the 5-door hatchback body styles that many competitors offer. Over 65% of sales are to business fleets whose buyers tend to be shopping primarily at the foot of the range, where there's a £2,000 premium to go from the entry-level 115 brake horsepower 1.6 litre eHDI model into the pokier 140 brake horsepower 2 litre HDI variant that I've been trying. At 1.6 litre level, there's the £500 option of Peugeot's slightly jerky but very efficient EGC semi-automatic gearbox. Go for this 2 litre HDI and you've the option of finding another £1,900 for the 163 brake horsepower automatic version. If you can stretch to a 2 litre diesel engine in your 508, then I'd suggest you carefully consider whether it's worth stretching to the newer technology of the 150 brake horsepower BlueHDi version. Yes, in trading up from this older 2 litre HDI 140 model, there's an £1,100 premium to pay. But in return, you get a bit more performance and a lot more efficiency that will lower your tax bill if you're a company user. Do the sums and see if the savings significantly add up. Other 508 models require much deeper pockets. You'll need a £30,000 budget if you want the 2.2 litre GT variant, the same kind of money that'll buy you the go anywhere looks of the RXH estate version, providing you're prepared to have it with a conventional 2 litre BlueHDi diesel engine. If you want your RXH with the clever tax-beating hybrid 4 diesel electric 4-wheel drive powertrain, then you'll need a £32,000 budget. Onto the value proposition that represents. In general terms, it's true that you might save around £1,000 if you were to look at a comparable Ford Mondeo or this model's group stablemate Citroën C5. And maybe double that or more if you were to look at comparable versions of cars like Vauxhall's Insignia, Toyota's Avensis or Hyundai's i40. But none of these rivals are as well equipped as this 508, so you'd have to pay extra for a plusher trim level to get a decent spec. You'd have to do that in a Volkswagen Passat too, so in effect with that car you'd end up spending quite a bit more. If, having considered all of that, you conclude that it is a 508 that you really want, then you're going to need to know exactly how generous Peugeot has been with the standard spec. The answer is that you'll find most of the features you'd expect to be fitted to a car of this kind, and maybe a few more. Even entry-level active variants get LED daytime running lights, rear parking sensors, auto headlamps and wipers, tinted glass, power folding mirrors, an ultrasonic alarm and 18-inch alloy wheels. Inside there's automatic dual zone air conditioning and the 7-inch multifunction colour touchscreen from where you can control a DAB digital radio, satellite navigation and Bluetooth for your mobile phone. Oh, and thank goodness, a proper full-sized spare wheel. Most, though, will want to upgrade to the plusher Allure spec that I have here, which adds niceties like the full LED light set at the front with its front fog lights, plus half-leather seat trim, a keyless start system, the dubious pleasure of an automatic electric parking brake, and, on SW estate models, a panoramic glass roof. Tempting options include full leather trim, a sunroof, a thumping upgrade JBL hi-fi system and a motorised tailgate on SW models. But you'll be wanting to know about the really high-tech stuff. After all, we expect our family cars to offer a feast of it these days, and it's true that in this respect the 508 does still lag behind rivals in a few areas. For example, there's no collision mitigation braking to avoid pedestrians or low-speed accidents, no self-parking system and no radar cruise control for the motorway maintaining of your distance to the car in front. Having said that, it does its best to make up for this with a host of other features. Though, as usual, most of this stuff is found only on plusher models or on the options list. Into this category fall things like a high beam assistant that dips your headlights for you at night, a head-up display that projects driving information onto the lower part of the inside of the windscreen in front of you, active corner lighting that alters the direction of your headlamp beam to follow you around corners, a Wi-Fi on-board unit so anyone can get online in car, and a massaging front seat just like your company CEO has in his limo. An impressive standard feature across the range is the Peugeot Connect SOS and assistance system that in an accident will automatically alert the emergency services to your precise GPS location. Could be a lifesaver. More conventional safety kit includes twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus a host of electronic acronyms to try and ensure that you never have to use them. That means ABS brakes with EBFD, electronic brake force distribution, to make them more effective, and EBA emergency braking assistance to help in violent stops. For slippery roads, there's ESP stability control too, of course, and ASR traction control. There are also tyre pressure sensors, and most models get a blind spot detection system that stops you from dangerously pulling out to overtake another car. Peugeot reckons that its clever BlueHDi diesel engines offer have-your-cake-and-eat-it technology and wheels out this much improved 508 model as proof. So it is that you can enjoy the performance of the 2-litre 150 brake horsepower BlueHDi variant, yet return a 67.3 miles per gallon combined cycle fuel figure that in SW guise still betters that of the much feebler 115 brake horsepower 1.6 litre eHDi manual gearbox model. The BlueHDi model CO2 return is better too, 110 grams per kilometre in SW form, as opposed to 112 grams per kilometre for a 1.6 litre eHDi stick-shift 508 variant. And if you want to do better than that, the older 1.6 still has a trick up its sleeve. For when this engine is mated with Peugeot's semi-automatic EGC gearbox, it can prove to be notably cleaner and more frugal. In SW form, a 508 1.6 eHDi EGC variant puts out only 105 grams per kilometre of CO2 and manages 70.6 miles per gallon on the combined cycle. Here I'm trying the older tech Euro 5 engine you can have in this car. The 2-litre HDI 140 unit, which when fitted to the SW returns 58.9 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 125 grams per kilometre of CO2. Go for the 2-litre HDI 163 automatic model and those figures fall significantly to 51.4 miles per gallon and 144 grams per kilometre. As I've said elsewhere in this film, that 2-litre HDI 163 engine and 6-speed automatic transmission package forms the basis for the clever 508 Hybrid 4 models that made these mechanicals with a 37 brake horsepower electric motor to create quite astonishing improvements in efficiency. A 508 Hybrid 4 puts out just 91 grams per kilometre of CO2 and is capable of delivering 80.7 miles per gallon on the combined cycle. Benefit in kind for this model is rated at just 12%, an unheard of figure for such a large, powerful, luxurious estate car. Nor will a 508 Hybrid 4 incur the government's usual 3% diesel surcharge applicable to conventional diesel rivals. As a result of all this, under current company car tax law, this diesel electric variant will cost a typical owner around half the amount in annual tax that they'd pay for a conventional rival, say a diesel-powered Ford Mondeo estate. Companies buying this Peugeot benefit from lower employer national insurance contributions, alongside an allowance for the company to offset 100% write-down allowance of the list price in the first year against taxable profits. Small wonder that more than 80% of sales of Hybrid 4 models have been to business buyers. Turning back to the 508 range as a whole, I'll mention to the green-fingered that 85% of the mass of a 508 is recyclable and 95% is biodegradable. On a more practical note, residual values won't of course be like those you'd get from the premium German brands, or even as good as those from Volkswagen or Honda. But they have proved to be firmer with this 508 than they were with its 407 predecessor, thanks to a reduction in dealer discounting. Insurance might be slightly more expensive than some rivals, but lengthy 20,000 mile service intervals will be welcome, as may be the OptiWay service plan that helps you budget for routine maintenance. Every maker in this sector presents its car as appealing to young, active, stylish individuals with active lifestyles and so on, which is rubbish, of course. Most of those people will want a sporting model or a crossover, or perhaps the kind of BMW 3 Series, Audi A4 or Mercedes C-Class model that so many Mondeo segment folk have defected to in recent years. The problem is, though, that these kind of cars are becoming quite pricey, especially if you want any semblance of feel-good factor to be part of the ownership proposition, which perhaps explains why a conventional mainstream badged medium-range family saloon or estate like this retains so much appeal in the modern marketplace. This one looks quite smart, doesn't it? Certainly it's now desirable enough to be selected out of choice by the many company car drivers often forced into daily usage of a model of this kind. True, dynamically this 508 may not be a class leader, but the fact remains that few cars in this segment offer a better blend of comfort, style and handling. This one must face down a number of more recently developed key rivals, but few of these can offer a more modern range of efficient engines. Would we ever have imagined a few years ago that a car of this kind would routinely be able to average over 65 miles per gallon and put out only just over 100 grams per kilometre of CO2? This one can, and does it even better still if you can stretch to it in its clever diesel-electric hybrid 4 guises. If you buy one though, I have a feeling that's not going to be the reason why. 508 folk, it seems, are people who want style and comfort, but don't want either of those things to compromise the ownership experience. They're people with a very distinct set of priorities. Well, here's a car that'll continue to suit them perfectly.